The scratch beside the lock was so thin I almost convinced myself it had always been there. Almost. I stood at the end of the upstairs hallway with a basket of folded towels pressed against my hip, staring at the brass keyhole of Thomas's study. For 12 years, that door had remained locked. My children had stopped asking why years ago. Daniel called it my shrine when he was angry. Emily called it grief when she was trying to defend me. Neither of them knew the truth was more complicated. I set the towels on the floor and bent closer. A pale crescent marked the wood beside the lock, fresh enough that the exposed grain was still lighter than the surrounding walnut. Someone had missed the keyhole. My stomach tightened. I unlocked the door. The study smelled exactly as it always did, old paper, cedar shelves, and a faint trace of Thomas's pipe tobacco that probably existed only in my memory now. Nothing appeared disturbed. His desk sat beneath the shuttered window. His books lined the shelves. 3 gray filing boxes remained stacked beside the cabinet. Then I looked at the photograph. Thomas and I had taken it at Virginia Beach during our 25th anniversary. I had deliberately positioned the silver frame so its lower corner touched the edge of the second filing drawer. Now there was a gap. Less than half an inch. But enough. Someone had opened the drawer. And I knew who. 3 weeks earlier, my daughter-in-law Vanessa had been standing in my kitchen helping me sort mail after I slipped on the back steps. I hadn't broken anything, but Daniel insisted Vanessa come by, until I was steady again. Vanessa had smiled while reorganizing my kitchen. She had labeled my medications even though I didn't need labels. She had created folders for my utility bills even though I had paid my own bills for 40 years. Then she gave me a new leather key organizer. "You shouldn't carry that ugly old ring anymore," she said. "Half these keys probably don't even work." I remembered the way she had spread them across the counter. Front door. Garage. Mailbox. Shed. Study. Her fingers paused on the small antique key for perhaps 2 seconds. At the time, I said nothing. I rarely did. Silence had become my survival strategy after Thomas died. Daniel was 37 now, but arguments with him could still make me feel as though one wrong sentence might cost me my son forever. His mortgage business had been struggling for more than a year. Every conversation about money seemed to remind him that his father had once rescued him from a failed investment. Thomas had believed Daniel was smart. Thomas had also believed Daniel moved too fast. That distinction had caused more pain in our family than Daniel ever understood. I crossed the study and opened the disturbed drawer. The folders inside looked untouched. That was exactly what worried me. Vanessa was too careful to leave a mess. I had noticed her curiosity months earlier. At Easter dinner, she asked whether Thomas had kept original property deeds upstairs. In June, she asked if I still used the metal filing cabinet in his study. Then, one Sunday over coffee, she said casually, "Wasn't there another door into Thomas's office years ago?" There had been. It had been sealed during renovations before Daniel even met her. I never told Vanessa that. I also never told her about Thomas's filing system. Yet 2 weeks before I noticed the scratch, she had stood beside me while I searched for an insurance policy and said, "Why did Thomas write dates in red pencil on everything?" I turned so quickly she laughed. "Daniel must have mentioned it," she said. Maybe. But Daniel had hated paperwork his entire life. He wouldn't have remembered the color of his father's pencil if his life depended on it. That afternoon, I called my attorney, Helen Cross. By sunset, every original deed, estate document, ownership certificate, and trust record Thomas had left was removed from the house and stored in Helen's secure archive. But I did something else. Something that would have horrified the old version of me. I replaced them. Not with blank folders. With believable ones. Draft deeds. Old valuation reports. Incomplete estate planning documents. Enough truth to make the lies inside them convincing. One document suggested I was considering transferring Thomas's commercial building on Hawthorne Avenue entirely to Emily. That building was the one asset Daniel still did not fully understand. Thomas had inherited it from his father. A 2-story brick commercial property occupied by a pharmacy, an accounting firm, and 2 medical offices. It brought in dependable rent and had survived every recession we'd lived through. The latest informal valuation put it somewhere around $1.8 million. I had never discussed the number with Daniel. Which was why I noticed when he mentioned it over dinner. "Property over there is worth close to $2 million now," he said, cutting into his steak. My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. Vanessa kept drinking her wine. "Where did you hear that?" I asked. Daniel shrugged. "Public records. Market data. It's my business, Mom." Technically, that was possible. But Daniel's mortgage work focused on suburban homes, not commercial buildings. And he had never shown interest in the property before. Vanessa touched his arm. "You know Daniel," she said lightly. "He researches everything." That almost made me laugh. Instead, I smiled. For the rest of dinner, I watched her. She asked whether I had updated my will. She asked whether Emily knew how much rental income one received. She even joked that I would probably leave everything to the responsible daughter. Daniel didn't laugh. I saw the hurt before he hid it. That was Vanessa's gift. She never planted a lie by itself. She wrapped it around a fear that already existed. After dinner, Daniel helped carry dishes into the kitchen while Vanessa went upstairs to use the bathroom. The bathroom was at the opposite end of the hall from Thomas's study. I heard nothing. No footsteps. No door. But when she returned, she had that calm, pleasant expression she always wore when she believed she knew something I didn't. She kissed my cheek before leaving. "Call me if you need help with those bills," she said. "I will." Daniel hugged me stiffly. As he stepped outside, I nearly stopped him. I nearly said, "Your wife has been inside your father's study." But what would happen then? He would demand proof. Vanessa would deny it. Daniel would ask why I kept the room locked in the first place. And eventually, the argument would become about me. My secrecy. My refusal to explain Thomas's estate. My supposed lack of trust in my own children. I had spent 12 years avoiding that confrontation. But that night, standing alone in the kitchen, I finally admitted something to myself. My silence was no longer keeping the peace. It was giving Vanessa room to write her own version of the truth. I waited until their car disappeared down the street. Then I went upstairs. The study door was still locked. Inside, I checked the second filing drawer. The photograph had moved again. This time, I also found the smallest gray folder sitting 2 inches farther back than I had left it. Inside was the bait document suggesting Emily would receive the Hawthorne Avenue building. At the bottom of the second page was a phrase I had invented with Helen. Northbridge transfer. It sounded official. It meant absolutely nothing. I closed the folder and returned it exactly where Vanessa expected to find it. Then I sat in Thomas's chair and looked at the scratched lock. For years, Daniel believed I kept that room closed because I couldn't let go of his father. Vanessa believed I kept it closed because I was hiding money. Neither of them understood why Thomas had once written red dates on those folders. And neither knew that the documents inside the study were no longer secrets. They were bait. Vanessa had copied my key. What she didn't know was that I had been waiting for her to use it. 3 days after Vanessa entered the study, my electric bill went unpaid. I knew because I received a red notice taped to my front door. At first, I assumed I had made a mistake. I went inside, opened my laptop, and checked the account. The payment had never been processed. That bothered me. I had used automatic payment for 11 years. I called the utility company. The woman on the phone told me the billing settings had been changed 6 days earlier. Changed how? I asked. The automatic payment was removed, and the mailing address for notices was updated. To what address? There was a pause while she checked. An address on Westbridge Lane. Daniel and Vanessa's house. I sat very still. Vanessa had helped me set up a shared household management account after my fall. She said it would make things easier if I ever needed help paying something. At the time, it sounded practical. Now I understood that practical things could become dangerous when the wrong person controlled them. I restored the settings and said nothing. That evening Daniel called me. "Mom, did you forget to pay your electric bill?" The question came too quickly. I handled it. That's not what I asked. I felt something cold move through me. How did you know about it? Another pause. Vanessa saw a notice. At my house? No. Something got forwarded. His tone already carried that careful patience people used when they believed they were speaking to someone confused. "I'm fine, Daniel." I didn't say you weren't. But that was exactly what he meant. Over the next 2 weeks, small things began happening. A property tax reminder went to Daniel. My insurance agent called to confirm whether Vanessa was now authorized to receive policy information. A pharmacy notification listed Vanessa's number as my secondary contact even though I had never approved it. Each incident was minor enough to explain. Together, they formed a pattern. Vanessa, meanwhile, became more attentive. She brought groceries. She offered to organize my files. At Sunday dinner, when I mentioned that Emily was visiting the following weekend, Vanessa smiled and said, "You told me she was coming Thursday." I said Saturday. Daniel looked up. Vanessa tilted her head. "Are you sure?" The room went quiet. "Yes." She laughed softly. "Okay. I must have misunderstood. But I noticed Daniel watching me afterward. That was the point. Vanessa never needed to call me incompetent. She only needed to make Daniel wonder." Emily arrived the following Saturday and immediately sensed something was wrong. My daughter had never trusted Vanessa. She tried to hide it for Daniel's sake, but Emily had always been better at reading people than her brother. While we were washing dishes, she lowered her voice. "Why is Vanessa asking me about Dad's building?" I dried my hands. "What did she ask?" "Whether you were planning to sell it. Whether I had discussed ownership with you. Whether you'd promised me anything." My stomach tightened. "What did you tell her?" "That it was none of her business." I almost smiled. That was Emily. Direct where I had spent years being careful. "She's doing something," Emily said. "I know." Emily stared at me. "You know." I told her only part of it. I told her Vanessa had been asking unusual questions. I did not tell her about the copied key. Not yet. Emily leaned against the counter. Then confront her. No. Mom. I need to understand what she wants first. Emily looked frustrated. You've done this your whole life. You wait. You absorb things. You tell yourself you're keeping the family together. Her words hurt because they were true. Before I could answer, Daniel arrived without warning. Vanessa was with him. The moment Daniel walked into the house, I knew something had changed. He didn't hug me. He didn't even take off his coat. He held his phone in one hand. Is it true? He asked. Emily stepped closer to me. Is what true? Daniel ignored her. He looked directly at me. Are you giving the Hawthorne building to Emily? There it was. The bait had reached him. I felt strangely calm. Where did you hear that? Daniel's jaw tightened. Just answer me. I asked you a question. Vanessa moved beside him. Margaret, maybe this isn't the time to be defensive. I turned to her. Interesting choice of word. Daniel shoved his phone toward me. On the screen was a photograph. A page from inside Thomas's study. My fake estate draft. I recognized the margins immediately. Emily saw it too. Where did you get that? She asked. Daniel glanced at Vanessa. Only for a second. But I saw it. Vanessa answered. We found it. Where? Daniel stepped in. Mom, stop changing the subject. I'm not changing anything. I want to know why you have photographs of documents from a locked room in my house. His expression shifted. For the first time, guilt appeared. Vanessa recovered faster. Daniel was worried you were hiding something. I looked at my son. And that made this acceptable? He exploded. You have kept Dad's study locked for 12 years. Emily snapped, that doesn't mean you get to break into it. Daniel turned on her. Of course you'd say that. Apparently you're getting the $2 million building. I don't want her building. That's easy to say when Mom already decided you deserve everything. Vanessa placed a hand on his arm. Daniel. She said his name softly, as though calming him. But her eyes stayed on me. She wanted the argument. She had prepared for it. I understood that now. Daniel began listing every resentment he had never fully voiced. The money Thomas had loaned him years earlier. The times I questioned his investments. The way I praised Emily for being careful. The fact that I never explained what remained in Thomas's estate. And beneath every accusation was the same wound. You never trusted me. Vanessa had found it and pressed until it bled. Then she delivered the next piece. We're not trying to take anything from you, she said. We're trying to protect you. Emily laughed bitterly. Protect her from what? Vanessa's face became concerned. The missed bills. The account changes. The confusion over dates. The tax notice. I stared at her. She was using problems she had created as evidence against me. Daniel took a folded document from his coat. I talked to someone. My stomach dropped. What is that? A temporary financial power of attorney. Emily swore under her breath. Daniel continued. Just until we get things organized. You want control of my finances. No. Vanessa and I want to help. No. His face hardened. Mom, you won't even discuss it. There is nothing to discuss. You are hiding almost $2 million in property while bills are being missed. They are my bills. And Dad's property. That sentence struck harder than the others. I looked at him. Your father left that property to me. Daniel's mouth twisted. And everything Dad left was supposed to become ours eventually. You told me that yourself. I had. Years ago. Before I understood how deeply those words could be weaponized. Vanessa spoke gently. Then why does the document say Emily gets it? I looked at her. For one dangerous second, I wanted to tell them everything. I wanted to say the paper was fake. I wanted to tell Daniel his wife had walked into a trap. But I still didn't know how far Vanessa's plan extended. So I stayed silent. Daniel misunderstood exactly as Vanessa knew he would. His face collapsed. Oh my God. Daniel. You were really going to do it? Emily stepped between us. She didn't say that. She didn't have to. He backed toward the door. Then he said the one thing I was not prepared for. Dad would be ashamed of what you're doing to us. The room disappeared around me. For 12 years, I had carried secrets because I believed they protected him. And now my own son was using his father's memory as a weapon against me. Daniel, I whispered. But he was already leaving. Vanessa followed him. At the doorway, she looked back. Not triumphantly. That would have been easier. She looked almost sympathetic. That frightened me more. Daniel stopped answering my calls after that. For 9 days, nothing. No texts. No visits. Emily called him twice. He refused to speak to her. I told myself I could survive losing money. I could survive selling the house. I could survive being insulted by Vanessa. But I did not know if I could survive my son believing I had loved him less. Then, late one evening, Emily sent me a message. Mom. Daniel forwarded this during our argument. Look carefully. Attached was the photograph Vanessa had shown him. I enlarged it. Then enlarged it again. My hands began to shake. Near the bottom of the page was the phrase Helen and I had deliberately inserted. Except the word was misspelled. Northbridge transfer. I stared at it. The typo existed only in one copy. The copy inside Thomas's study. Helen's archive draft spelled Northbridge correctly. Now I had proof Vanessa had not merely found information somewhere. She had taken it directly from behind my locked door. But then I noticed something else in Emily's forwarded message. Below the photograph was part of an earlier text from Daniel. A sentence Vanessa had apparently sent him. Once the Northbridge transfer is confirmed, the tenant problem can be handled. Tenant problem. I read the words again. The Hawthorne building had 4 long-term tenants. None had problems. Unless someone wanted them gone. In that moment, I understood that Vanessa was not simply trying to convince Daniel I favored Emily. She was using the information from my study for something outside the family. Something involving my property. I had thought I was watching a woman trying to influence an inheritance. I was wrong. She was preparing to take control of an asset I still owned. And for the first time since Thomas died, I stopped wondering how to keep my family from breaking apart. I started thinking about how to prove exactly who had broken it. The next morning, I stopped calling Daniel. That decision hurt more than I expected. For 9 days, I had been checking my phone every 20 minutes, hoping his name would appear. I had rehearsed what I would say if he called. I had even written 3 different messages and deleted every one. Then I looked again at Vanessa's text about the tenant problem, and something inside me changed. I was done reacting. If Vanessa wanted me frightened, isolated, and desperate to repair things with Daniel, then I would give her exactly what she expected to see. But privately, I would start building a record. I drove downtown to see Helen Cross. Helen had been my attorney for almost 18 years. She was 70, silver-haired, precise, and incapable of being impressed by drama. I handed her a printed copy of Vanessa's photograph. She put on her reading glasses. The misspelling is still there, she said. Yes. And this came from Daniel? Emily forwarded it. Helen leaned back. That gives us provenance, but not motive. I think I have motive. I showed her Vanessa's message about the tenants. Helen read it twice. Then she looked at me. Margaret, who else knows the Hawthorne leases? No one in the family. Then we start there. For the next several days, I did something I had not done in years. I used the skills from my old county records job. Dates. Logs. Versions. Ownership trails. People assumed records work was boring. It wasn't. Records were memory without emotion. They did not care who cried louder. They did not care who sounded more convincing. They simply showed what happened. The utility company gave me a written confirmation showing the account change had been made through the shared household portal Vanessa helped create. The timestamp was 2:14 p.m. on a Tuesday. That Tuesday, I had been 3 hours away visiting Emily. Helen requested records from my insurance company. Same pattern. A contact authorization had been added electronically. Again, from the shared portal. Then we found the property tax change. That one bothered me most. Someone had redirected the reminder to Daniel's address 2 weeks before he confronted me about forgetting the bill. Vanessa had not merely taken advantage of mistakes. She had manufactured them. Enough for fraud? I asked. Helen shook her head. Enough to show manipulation. We need more before we accuse her of anything criminal. That was Helen. Never bigger than the evidence. Never smaller either. Then I called the 4 tenants in the Hawthorne building. 3 said nothing unusual had happened. The 4th, a pharmacist named Robert Klein, hesitated. There was one call, he said. When? Maybe 2 weeks ago. From whom? A woman. Said she was helping the Bennett family review future plans for the building. My hand tightened around the phone. What did she ask? Whether I'd consider ending my lease early if the property changed ownership. I looked at Helen. She was writing everything down. Did she give a name? No. But she said a developer might be willing to cover relocation costs. A developer. After the call, Helen looked at me. Now we're somewhere. It took another week to learn where. A commercial broker Helen knew had heard quiet interest in the Hawthorne property from a development group called Calder Development. They wanted the block for a medical office expansion. There had been no formal offer. There had, however, been family representatives asking what conditions would make the building easier to sell. I felt sick. Vanessa had gone beyond spying. She had begun preparing my property for a transaction without my knowledge. Daniel might have believed this was about inheritance. Vanessa was already thinking about liquidation. I wanted to confront her immediately. Helen stopped me. Not yet. She's talking to developers about my building. And if you confront her now, she'll say she was only researching options for Daniel. She entered my study. Daniel may claim she had family permission. He can't give permission to enter my locked room. No. But he can muddy the issue. I hated that she was right. So we needed something Vanessa could not explain away. Something she would use only if she believed it was genuine. That was when I thought of Northbridge. The word had already caught her attention. She believed it mattered. So I made it matter more. Helen and I drafted a second fake document. This one referred to a non-existent entity called the Northbridge Family Trust. The document suggested that ownership of the Hawthorne building could be transferred through the trust without waiting for a full estate settlement. It was plausible enough to interest someone who understood real estate. And false enough that any outside use of it would reveal the source. There was no Northbridge Family Trust. No registration. No tax identification number. No account. Nothing. Helen kept one dated copy. I kept one sealed in my safe. And the third went into Thomas's study. This time, I did something even riskier. I left the study key in the drawer beside my kitchen phone. Not hidden. Not obvious. Available. Vanessa came by 2 days later. She brought soup. I almost admired the performance. "I know things are tense," she said. "I hate seeing you and Daniel like this." "So do I. He misses you." "Does he?" Her eyes softened. "He's hurt." That was the sentence she wanted me to respond to. She wanted tears. An apology. A confession. Instead, I said quietly, "Maybe I've been too rigid." Vanessa watched me more closely. I continued. "I've been thinking about the building. Maybe there's a way to restructure things." There. The smallest spark appeared in her eyes. Gone immediately. But I saw it. "Restructure how?" "I'm meeting with Helen." Vanessa nodded. "That's probably wise." Then I left the kitchen. On purpose. I went upstairs and stayed there long enough for someone to open a drawer, take a key, make a copy, photograph a page, or all three. When I came back down, Vanessa was standing beside the sink. The key looked untouched. The following morning, the family photograph in Thomas's study had moved. Again. 5 days later, Helen called me. "You were right." She forwarded an email received by Calder Development's broker. The sender had asked whether a transaction involving the Hawthorne property could be structured through something called the Northbridge Family Trust. My hands went cold. What exactly did they say? Helen read it. They asked whether the developer would proceed if title were transferred into Northbridge Family Trust before closing. I closed my eyes. There it was. The name existed nowhere outside my trap. Vanessa had taken it. And used it. For the first time, we had proof that the information stolen from my study had traveled into a proposed property deal. Helen said, "Now we wait." For what? For her to commit to it. So I invited Daniel and Vanessa to an estate meeting. I told Daniel I wanted to discuss the building and clear up misunderstandings. He responded within 6 minutes. That alone told me Vanessa had been waiting for this. The meeting was scheduled for Friday at Helen's office. I thought I was finally ready. Then Daniel called me Thursday night. His voice sounded exhausted. "Mom, there's something you should know before tomorrow." I sat down. "What?" I knew Vanessa went into the study. For a moment, I couldn't speak. "You knew?" "She told me afterward." "And you were fine with that?" I told her she could look. I almost laughed. "You gave your wife permission to enter a locked room in my house?" "I thought Dad's estate papers were in there. They were mine to control. He was my father too." The old anger was back. But now there was something else. Shame. Daniel continued. "You told us years ago everything Dad left would eventually belong to Emily and me. Vanessa thought you were hiding something. And you agreed? I thought maybe you had changed things." "For Emily." He didn't answer. That silence told me enough. Then he said, "Vanessa has the messages, Mom." "What messages?" "The ones where you said Dad's estate was for both of us." My stomach tightened. Vanessa had planned even for this. She was going to turn my own words into evidence that I had broken a promise. The next morning, we met in Helen's conference room. Emily sat beside me. Daniel and Vanessa sat across from us. Vanessa had brought a binder. Of course she had. She looked composed. Prepared. Certain. Helen began by asking everyone to stay calm. Vanessa ignored her. She opened the binder and pushed printed messages across the table. "These are Margaret's own words." Daniel looked miserable. Emily read them. Then looked at me. "Mom, why didn't you ever explain any of this?" I felt the room shift. For the first time, even Emily seemed uncertain. Vanessa saw it too. She leaned forward. "We're not trying to hurt anyone. But Margaret has been secretive for years, and now these documents prove there were plans involving Northbridge that she never disclosed." Helen looked at me. I said nothing. Vanessa continued. "The Northbridge paperwork exists. We have copies. It shows there was a legitimate structure for transferring the property. There it was. She had chosen the hill she was willing to die on. Northbridge. The fake trust. The document she could only know about because she had entered the study." Vanessa mistook my silence for fear. She looked directly at me and said, "You can't pretend those papers don't exist." I folded my hands on the table. For the first time in weeks, I felt completely calm. Because Vanessa had just done exactly what I needed. She had committed herself to defending evidence I had invented. And now all I had to do was let her keep talking. Vanessa should have stopped talking. Instead, she opened her binder. That was the moment I knew she still believed she controlled the room. She slid 3 printed pages toward Helen. "The Northbridge documents are clear," she said. "Margaret has been planning changes for months, possibly longer. Daniel had every reason to be concerned." Helen did not touch the papers. "Where did you obtain these?" Vanessa glanced at Daniel. He looked down. "I already told you," he said. "I knew she went into Dad's study." Helen's voice stayed level. "That was not my question." Vanessa leaned back. "I photographed them." There was no embarrassment in her tone now. She had decided honesty about the intrusion made her stronger. "I was protecting my husband." Emily stared at her. "By breaking into Mom's private files?" Vanessa's expression tightened. "By finding out whether Daniel was being disinherited behind his back." I looked at my son. He still would not meet my eyes. That hurt. But not the way it had 2 weeks earlier. I had spent too long trying to make Daniel understand me before I understood what had actually happened. Now I wanted facts. Nothing else. Helen finally reached for the binder. "Then let's go through them." She placed a folder on the table. Inside were copies of Thomas's genuine estate records, all dated and authenticated from her archive. She arranged them in chronological order. "This is the actual chain of ownership for the Hawthorne property," she said. Vanessa barely glanced at them. Then Helen placed the photographed page beside the genuine draft. The differences were small. A paragraph break. A revision date. One changed phrase. And one misspelling. I pointed to it. "Read that." Daniel leaned forward. Vanessa didn't. Emily read aloud. "Northbridge transfer." Then she looked at the legitimate document. "Northbridge." Daniel frowned. "So?" "The misspelling matters," I said. Vanessa's eyes shifted to me. I continued. "That error existed in only one physical copy." The room went quiet. The copy inside the locked study. Vanessa's confidence weakened for the first time. "Only slightly." "That proves I photographed it." "I already admitted that." "I know." I nodded. "And if that were all you had done, we would be having a very different conversation." Helen opened another folder. Utility records. Insurance records. Property tax correspondence. Each page contained dates, timestamps, account access logs, and contact changes. Daniel picked one up. His face changed. "What is this?" "The electric account," I said. He looked at Vanessa. "The mailing address was changed to ours." Vanessa answered immediately. "She asked me to help with household management." Daniel looked at me. "Did you?" I gave her access to help if I needed it. I did not ask her to disable autopay. Vanessa shook her head. That could have been accidental. Helen slid another page across. Then this one must also have been accidental. The property tax reminder. Redirected to Daniel. Then the insurance account. Then the pharmacy contact change. Always through the same shared portal. Always before Daniel began accusing me of forgetting things. Emily's voice was barely above a whisper. You created the mistakes. Vanessa turned sharply. No. That is not what happened. It's exactly what it looks like, Emily said. Daniel still looked stunned. You told me she was declining. I told you I was concerned. You showed me bills. Because they weren't being paid. After the settings were changed. Vanessa's jaw tightened. She looked at me instead. This is what she wants. She wants you angry with me so nobody asks why she was hiding the property. There it was again. Redirect. Confuse. Make the accusation bigger than the evidence. For months, it had worked. So I gave her one more chance to use it. You believed the property was being transferred through Northbridge? Yes. The Northbridge Family Trust? Yes. Her answer came too quickly. Helen looked at me. I nodded. She removed one final document. Not the fake trust document. An email. She placed it in front of Daniel. It had been forwarded from a commercial broker associated with Calder Development. Daniel read the first paragraph. Then the second. His face drained. What is Calder Development? Vanessa said nothing. I answered. A developer interested in buying the Hawthorne building. Daniel looked up. Why are they mentioning Northbridge? No one spoke. He read the email again. The wording was almost identical to the planted document. Transfer through Northbridge Family Trust. Potential title restructuring. Tenant termination prior to acquisition. Daniel pushed the page away as though it had burned him. Vanessa. She recovered fast. This proves nothing. I was researching options. For whose property? I asked. She looked at me. You were clearly preparing to transfer it. No. You wrote it. No, Vanessa. I let the silence sit there. Then I said the words she had never imagined hearing. Northbridge Family Trust does not exist. Daniel stared at me. Emily went still. Vanessa laughed once. It sounded forced. That's absurd. Helen spoke. There is no registered trust by that name. No tax identification number. No trust agreement. No account. No beneficiary designation. Nothing. Vanessa's face changed. I had watched her lie for months. This was the first time I saw her lose the next sentence. I continued. The document you photographed was created after I began suspecting you were entering the study. Daniel turned toward me slowly. I looked at him. I moved every real original to Helen's archive before Vanessa ever photographed anything. Vanessa shook her head. You're making this up now. Helen answered. I have dated custody records proving otherwise. Then I placed my hand on the email from Calder Development. The phrase, Northbridge Family Trust, existed in 3 places. I raised one finger. Helen's secured copy. A second. My sealed copy. A third. And the fake document inside the study. Vanessa's lips parted. I kept going. If you only photographed papers because you were worried about Daniel's inheritance, then explain how the name of a non-existent trust reached a developer. She said nothing. Daniel looked at her. Not angry yet. Worse. He looked afraid of the answer. Did you contact them? Vanessa's voice dropped. I made inquiries. About selling my mother's building? It was going to become yours eventually. That isn't what I asked. Her control began slipping. She turned toward him. Daniel, your business is collapsing. We have debt you don't even know how close we are to defaulting on. His face hardened. I know about the debt. No. You know about some of it. The room froze. Vanessa realized too late what she had said. Daniel stared at her. How much? She looked away. That was enough. The truth widened in front of him. The study. The fake documents. The manipulated bills. The developer. All of it had been built around his fear that I loved Emily more. And Vanessa had used that fear because she needed money. Daniel stood abruptly. His chair scraped across the floor. You made me think she was losing her mind. Vanessa stood too. I was trying to save us. You made me accuse my mother. You already believed she didn't trust you. That sentence landed harder than anything else. Because it was true. Vanessa had not created every weakness in our family. She had found them. Then she had weaponized them. Daniel looked at me. I expected an apology. Instead, he whispered, why didn't you just tell me? I knew exactly what he meant. Why the locked room? Why the secrecy? Why 12 years? Why had I let him believe the worst? I looked at the old message Vanessa had printed. Everything your father left will eventually belong to you and Emily. Then Daniel asked the question I had avoided for more than a decade. And if the trust was fake, why did Dad write Northbridge in his notes? Vanessa looked at me. So did Emily. There was no reason to hide it anymore. Northbridge wasn't a trust, I said. Daniel frowned. It was your father's name for a contingency plan. His face changed. What plan? I had imagined this conversation 1,000 times. It had never hurt less. After your second failed investment, your father became worried about giving either of you large assets too early. Daniel looked as though I had slapped him. He thought I was irresponsible. He thought you were impulsive. That's the same thing. No. I shook my head. He loved you. He also knew love didn't make every decision safe. I explained the red pencil dates. Thomas had reviewed the plan each year. Those dates Vanessa noticed on the folders were annual checkpoints. He intended the Hawthorne property to remain under my control until both children were independently stable enough that inheritance would not become rescue money. Emily's eyes filled. Daniel said nothing. Then I told him the part that had cost me 12 years. Your father asked me not to tell you. Why? Because he knew how much his opinion mattered to you. My voice broke. He was dying, Daniel. He didn't want one of your last memories of him to be that he doubted your judgment. Daniel sat down again. I continued. So I let you blame me. His eyes lifted. I could see the moment he understood. The locked study had never been about keeping him away from money. I had been protecting his image of his father. Badly, perhaps. At too high a cost. But that had been the reason. Vanessa's betrayal had not uncovered a secret inheritance. She had uncovered a sacrifice. The room stayed silent for a long time. Then Helen closed the binder. The meeting was over. The consequences came afterward. Calder Development ended all discussions once Helen notified them that no family representative had authority to negotiate the property. I revoked every shared account permission Vanessa had ever received. Daniel separated his finances from hers and hired an independent attorney to understand the full extent of their debt. I did not ask him to leave her. That decision belonged to him. But I made one thing clear. I love you, I told him a week later. That does not give you access to my accounts, my home, my property, or my decisions. He cried. So did I. But I did not take the words back. Months later, I changed the study lock one final time. Then I surprised myself. I opened the door. Not for Daniel. Not for Emily. For me. I removed Thomas's old tax files and donated most of his books to the county library. I moved the heavy desk away from the window. Then I opened the curtains. Sunlight flooded the room so quickly I had to squint. For 12 years, I thought keeping that room untouched meant I was preserving my husband. I see it differently now. Grief had locked the door. Fear had kept it locked. Vanessa only taught me what happened when I confused silence with peace. The real victory was never keeping her out. It was realizing I no longer needed the door closed at all.